Thanks everyone for joining the Future Proof podcast. My name is Alex Mysinek. I am joined here from Shane. He is the founder and CEO of Swept AI. We're going to go a little bit into what his business is, what they do, go a little bit about industry insights, and then we'll just go from there. So Shane, thanks for joining me.
Of course. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, why don't you introduce Swept AI? Give us a little bit of a context about what you guys do and why you started the company.
Sure. So Swept AI, you can think of it as a trust layer for all things AI agents and agenics. So we're not going to go on to the model layer and try to tell you how well ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini do, but instead we plug in to wherever you're building agents or potentially you're deploying agents inside of your company, and we're going to evaluate them to see how well they actually perform in your context, and then in the long term monitor them to make sure that they stick together. And this really comes for me personally. I've been doing AI for 20 some years at this point, with my master's in AI from years ago when we were doing A-star algorithms and like just primordial neural networks at that point. But I was really focused in what do you when you have systems that behave unpredictably or essentially probabilistically is really what we were looking at, and how do you manage those. So I've done that for 10 years in the data science world, and then been in startups for the last 15 years as a CTO deploying various systems, and just saw the opportunity in 2023 when people started deploying their first chatbots into systems, and immediately had problems which were predictable if you were a data scientist, but maybe not if you were a programmer or a business person. And so this technology has just really impressive potential here. But it's a tool, and you can screw up with tools if you don't know how to use them. And so we come in there to really help you make sure you can use that tool and take it to its best ability inside your company.
So, from someone coming in that really doesn't know a lot of background about, bots that, businesses install, like chat bots and any kind of other context of it. What is a really good use case scenario for you, for any type of a scenario for like a small business, if they're running any type of chat bot or anything that you guys can help with? Give me kind of a quick overview of what you guys do, how you come in there, and how you help them.
Yeah. So you can almost think of it as we really help operationalize often those first workflows. So a lot of our early customers were what I'd call kind of blue collar AI. They're in manufacturing, small manufacturing, or even just small restoration companies, all kinds of things like that, and some small mom and pop SaaS. And they had some early successes using ChatGPT or something to help them write emails or start with some workflow on quotes, but they weren't really able to do much other than go put something in ChatGPT and have it come out. And so we can help turn those into repeatable workflows where they don't think about it anymore. There are plenty of agent tools that help them do that. But what we really do is we help them evaluate and monitor it, because what we do find a lot of times here is people, once they start using AI, they stop doing the fun work or the new work and they start babysitting it. And that's really where we want to take over. So we evaluate their AI, make sure that if it's running quotes for them and sending it off to a large automaker, that it's consistent and flags it when it does poorly. And that just allows them then to actually run their business instead of just become a manager of AI, because I think that's personally a biggest fear for a lot of folks, is you just become a babysitter of AI instead of being able to enhance your business in other ways.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's super valuable. I mean, especially from someone, like you said, like blue collar, really just wants to run their business efficiently and, do what they know best. And obviously that's not, AI if they're, running a house services company or anything like that. Their focus is not that. They want to run it as efficiently as possible. So you can kind of come in there and make sure that they're doing it the correct way.
Precisely.
So with Swept AI is tackling one of the hardest challenges in tech, the trust part. So what inspired you guys to, focus on AI integrity, safety, and compliance?
Yeah. So our very first recognition of it was when the National Eating Disorder Association had a labor dispute, and so they put a chatbot in place to replace their humans, and it just had a poor reward mechanism, and immediately started telling teenagers that were on this chat, hey, you're struggling with bulimia, let's measure your belly fat, or let's talk about anorexia instead, which did exactly what it was meant to do, which was keep the conversation short and spend less money on tokens, but it completely eroded the trust of a pretty reputable and worthy organization. And so that's where we see its key is, a lot of times people they're skeptical with AI, and then they start trusting it too much, and it goes off the deep end very quickly. And it's just because, again, we're not cut out for predicting the way these things can be, but we're also not cut out for having constant attention on our AI systems. And so, if we want to actually trust systems that aren't going to behave consistently, we have to have some mechanism in place, and it can't be passive. It has to be active, supervised, and really informing us.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it probably thought it was doing the correct thing by giving other examples or things to ways to help that, that patient, but obviously
Hmm.
it's not trained in, psychology or knowing like what that suggestion was going to do to somebody that had, an issue like that. So that's kind of where you guys can come in and almost train it from the back end and kind of tweak it
Exactly.
a little bit.
We retrain, we make sure that it's aligned on what are the actual outcomes that you want. And then there's a lot of times, there's a great Donald Rumsfeld quote of from the, there are things that you know, things you don't know, and things you don't know, you don't know. And that's a big part with AI, and what you do with something like active supervision is you're not going to be able to predict every way that it's going to do something silly. Doing a couple hundred evals manually yourself is just not sufficient to really know the bounds of a system. And so having something like supervision lets you go, okay, there are things we don't know here, and we're going to use statistics to be able to uncover them before they go and severely harm, a person or your financial parts of your business, or if you're manufacturing something that orders the wrong parts or too many or whatever the case may be, they're all large impacts to your business and your livelihood. And those are just things that you want to catch as quickly as possible.
Yeah, well, where my mind goes, because I talk to a lot of like IT and like cybersecurity companies, and that's where my kind of main focus is. And their trust is obviously on like cybersecurity attacks
Hmm.
and things like that, where your reputation is hurt. There's like some quote or not quote, but like a statistic that like after a cybersecurity attack on a company, even a small business, that they're out of business within like 6 months after that because their trust is
Hmm.
completely gone. So now you're just taking that differently. You're doing it on not a cybersecurity threat level. You're just doing it on something that it's your businesses or your trust's message is getting, taken the wrong way by a chatbot or, some type of AI personality that maybe not relaying what you guys are trying to do the correct way. So I think that's,
Exactly. And kind of your example, in the past, it's been very hard for a singular human in your workflow to completely take down your business without it being recognized, because humans can only work so fast and only have so large of an impact. But when you're handing over the reins to some key things on your business to an AI system, it moves fast and it can just make these decisions and impact you a lot quicker than you could ever predict. And so getting in there. And I think it also though goes to the cybersecurity of, you've now got a digital version of social engineering where people can attack these agents. And just like cybersecurity today, we know that we can't train humans to buffer every single every time a social engineering or phishing attack happens to them. We can train them to reduce it, but we have to be able to also understand a lot of cybersecurity is, how do you respond? How do you limit the blast radius of this? And the same thing happens in this agent layer with us, where it's just as much about detecting how likely is this, jailbreaking attempts, leaks at private information, prompt tool calls that you weren't expecting, and catching them quickly enough to recognize there's a pattern here and stopping it, versus assuming that you can stop everything. Because we learned that, I think, a little bit the hard way in cybersecurity over the last 25, 30 years, that you can't prevent every security vulnerability that's out there. And so you have to be as much about fire, you've got your fire prevention, but what's also your fire response and your fire fighting.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good insight on it, especially without, bringing those two worlds or what you're trying to do together. So your 9 pillar trust framework sounds like the foundation of like safe AI. How did you develop it?
So that was in co-development with, ourselves, of just having done this for about 20 years, of knowing the places that machine learning models already have problems, and then layering that with generative AI. But that's also in partnership with some of our earliest customers, like the United Way and the University of Michigan, where we're going into the real world settings and figuring out, where does this have real impacts on, the customers or the patients inside of these systems, and to make sure that we're getting everything. And then you also layer on, best practices from SOC 2 and your NISTs and the various things to say, here's what it is. And this is really just us trying to lead the way and push beyond passivity inside of these, of a lot of security around AI. And that is very passive or checkbox based. And we really want this to be trustworthy, transparent, and just continuously active, because these systems morph every single time they have a new interaction, a new piece of context. So we have to treat them differently.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. So with you guys right now, do you think we're headed into like toward a future where every enterprise AI system will need like a trust score, kind of like what cybersecurity certifications are like today?
Yeah, it's if we really push it out and think about how we talk about AI in the future, we talk about it on something that's way closer to the way we hire people. And that's where you are. You're going to want some trusted place that says, hey, we've vetted and certified. It's the equivalent of having, your PhD in the back or your AWS certification that says you do this, but then also you're going to need some way to actually know that they keep on the job. I remember giving a talk not too long ago where you have to think of AI today until we have some major breakthrough, like a really eager intern. It's going to do everything. It has zero experience and can just completely screw up. And so we do need these ideas of trust scores and assessments so we have some idea how they do, but also we can't just back off and say, hey, once it's been certified trustworthy, we can let it go. We really have to dig in with it.
All right, so I kind of wanted to go maybe into something a little nuggets that you can help other, founders or CEOs or people that are starting, a company like yours or in the same realm. When you guys are going through this process of starting Swept AI, I know you guys are in the infancy stages or just the starting part of it, but what are your biggest challenges, or kind of what were the things that, roadblocks that you hit that you would probably change or not do again, or maybe just do a different way?
Sure. I think some of the biggest roadblocks are chasing venture right away before you have customer proof points. I would strongly push ourselves and do it again. And still to this day, we do it, of getting closer to bootstrapping, of don't expect somebody to bail you out with venture because they believe in your idea. It's a lot of it. If it's just betting on the idea, hopefully you have a great network, then somebody that truly already will bet on you for an idea, but to think that they're going to bet on you with no pedigree, probably not. So we spent far too much time chasing venture at the beginning once we thought we had a solid couple pieces of information. As soon as we had a handful of customers, the story completely changed and we were much more chased ourselves. And I think that's where, just looking back there, I'd say focus on bootstrapping. Can you do a runway for a year by yourself, or doing it off the side of your desk versus just hoping somebody's going to provide money? Because the one thing we saw is goalposts change all the time. Right now, if you have the word AI, maybe you have it a little bit easier, but that could change tomorrow for any reason. And you just need to still have good fundamentals. And if this business doesn't fly without venture funding, then it's probably not a solid business to begin with. You need something that can move in case the capital markets dry up on you.
Yeah, and yeah, I think like you just said, I mean, going after venture capitalists and investments, it must be really hard because, I mean, obviously you guys, when you're starting the business, you completely 100%, believe in it and believe in what you do and know that it's going to help, a bunch of companies, pitching that to someone that really either doesn't know you or, you're just, talking to for the first couple times. Yeah. It's probably a little bit harder to get that message across to them without any kind of social proof or, exact scenarios. So basically what you guys did is you slowed down a little bit, got some social proof, got some examples of like how you helped, and then kind of the people actually started reaching out to you or wanting to invest.
Exactly. We had a really big blitz when we had our first pilots, and a lot of, pretty large numbers that you'd look for in revenue, which we haven't hit even today. But suddenly, once we said, okay, we're going to stop there and start focusing on going past these pilots to let's get some recurring customers, and we had 6 or 7 small but good recurring customers, then it became, hey, wait, tell me more about what you're doing, and getting pulled into those conversations. And the same is happening today, where we're having some more successes again. And instead of having to go out and constantly, we probably had 150 no's on venture capital to start. And so, A, you've got to be really resilient to that. But B, it's like, make sure that you have more than a story. What is it that's pulling you there? And it suddenly became let me introduce you to this group. Let me introduce you here. I want to have this validated. And that's when you know there's been a piqued interest, but just showing up and pitching, it can work, but you have to pretty much get struck by lightning at that point.
Yeah. So, I mean, are you guys focused on any type of one company or industry or niche? Or are you basically trying to be that one, you know, stop shop for every business or every, whatever? So do you have an ICP or people that really should be reaching out to you that, you can really help truly?
Yeah. So we focus what we would say on much more high risk areas. So typically that's going to be health, finance, insurance, manufacturing, oil, gas, big enterprise SaaS, where you have some pretty big ramifications to companies. Not to say that we don't work with the others when they have a high risk, when the risk to the reward inside of their maybe smaller company is outsized. But it's really, there are good enough tools for people who are doing things where the fallout to a failed AI system is not going to kill their business, or it's not going to severely put them behind. There are good enough ways to handle that today. But when you have true risk to your system or your customers or your patients or whatever the case may be, that where SWEB falls in. So again, I'd say our biggest place is digital health in all places inside of health, but then it's followed quickly up by that manufacturing and insurance.
I mean, because digital health is huge. I mean, even a couple years ago, even before AI, I mean, you have like the bot, where not the bot, but the chat thing where you can kind of go on there and put your
Hmm.
symptoms in, and it kind of gives you recommendations and things like that. And yeah,
Yes.
especially, yeah, that's probably a big one to make sure that that recommendation or whatever that bot or that chat bot is actually giving them the right. I think there's back then, I think there was a little bit of and it might be different now. They might actually be able to, give a prescription or tell you what to do. But back then, I think their safety net was, I think everything had to be reviewed by like the doctor, and then
Right.
like the doctor prescribed you. So, there probably wasn't a ton of risk there, but maybe a little bit of, if you didn't make it all the way to that point, the reputation of like, what is this thing telling me, turn it off or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got even, the doctors, we're humans, we're
Well,
lazy by nature. And so you get enough AI recommendations that look good and the doctor just starts, signing off on it. That's where you get into trouble with these systems and why they're needed today. It's not the doctor's fault. We all become lax when we think that a system's running great. And so that's where you really need this kind of thing just to make sure, because our best work is not done with attention to details of super repetitive work where 1 out of every 1,000 is the problem. That's just
yeah.
really hard for a human to catch.
Yeah. That's actually a really good point. And I mean, yeah, you get so, maybe a doctor just gets so trustworthy on that one recommendation or something like that, and then the one recommendation that was wrong that's the killer to like their reputation. So no,
Yeah.
I think that's really good insight.
Yeah, we see that and we call it the trust spectrum internally, and we watch it with our own customers and like our platform, and you can watch where they tail off from super detailed views of everything to eventually they never even log in anymore, and they're just relying on it working or getting alerts, which is fine. It's a psychological phenomena we monitor, but knowing that is probably the most important thing for most businesses of it's insufficient and there's better uses of your time anyway than looking for needles inside of needle stacks.
True. All right. So if every company right now is deploying AI, if they could do one thing right now to make it safer, what would you tell them to do?
Evaluate it fully to a statistical level before you put it out there. So vibe checking it, putting a couple hundred, even a couple hundred evals is insufficient. Do the work to prove that it does what it says. And probably the other one I'd put on the other side is do a little bit of work to prove that it doesn't do the other stuff. Because there's a lot of times where we're only looking at the happy path of how well does it, I don't know, write quotes for me, but not often looking at like, well, how much does it do these other things that I don't want it to do? We just don't often measure that. I'd say the final one that a lot of people just aren't thinking about today when they do tests is they test it with themselves in mind, which is usually a near expert of the system of like, I'm going to go and talk to this AI to have it, I don't know, diagnose my engine. And they forget that the general public has no idea about engines and how they work. And so when they come to utilize your system, they are several levels below you. And so making sure you're testing with those long tails in mind of expertise. If you have a general purpose product like that, that is something people almost always forget. And the agents get far worse often when they're encounter people who are non-experts utilizing them because they're not providing the context that you would expect. So you need to put that into your system. How do you drag out more information? When do you stop? When do you elevate? People don't do that today. That's probably the one thing I would do is just be more robust. Go get your, fourth grade nephew to try using the system too, just because they'll use it in a completely different way.
Well, yeah, I mean, because it even boils down to one person using, one of the LLMs and getting a response completely different than somebody else that knows how to prompt it well, that, how to frame the problem, tell it what to do, tell it how to act. If you have that person obviously coming in that's an expert in what they're doing, you're going to get a much different response than, like you said, your
Exactly.
4-year-old nephew coming in and prompting it. So yeah, it's really good insight. All right, cool. Well, what excites you guys about the next chapter for Swept and kind of basically AI in general?
I mean, for AI in general, I think we're finally cresting the ridge of people going and seeing beyond chatbots to what if we have AI performing tasks that were either hard or so repetitive that we didn't do them. Like, I feel like we're finally seeing that in our own clients where they're just going beyond easy stuff to, well, wait a second, what are about these things that I do that are very repetitive? They're actually not high value in terms of work, but they're hard work. That's great. We're now finally seeing, I would say, real value unlocked, which just means for me, I think there's excitement of what does that unlock for those people in terms of what else they're going to do and accomplish. That's AI's real potential. And that's where I also, it's great for Swept because again, I don't want people to supervise AI. I think that's an utterly boring, useless task. I want software that does that, and I want humans to apply their ingenuity to new things. It's every time we see a technological revolution, we unlock new capacity and things to do well beyond what we used to. And so that's where I finally see like the industry has moved over away from just cool, this chatbot can make help desks easier to wow, we can truly automate huge swaths of busy work inside of our company. What more can we do?
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, awesome, man. Well, so if the business was intrigued on kind of what they were hearing today, wants to reach out to Swept AI or you, how can they find you? What's the easiest way to kind of get in touch?
Yeah, easiest ways, swept.ai, our website, or contact me, Shane at swept.ai or hello at swept.ai. There's a phone number if you're old school and want to talk on the phone. We know that helps with some of the blue collar relationship work there. So that's on the website as well. And yeah, just go in there, check it out. And we're always happy to talk and assess where you are as well and point you into different directions or implementation partners if you need help there. Visit the website or send me an email.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Right on. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.